Well, hello. This is um, December 8, 2024. It's a Sunday. It's, excuse me. Um, Let me restart. Welcome to everyone. Today is Sunday, December 8, 2024, the day after the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is no more. So we are going to talk all the news that's about Syria with a very dear friend of mine who's a Syrian American, an expert on Syria and Lebanon, but definitely the whole region. And so let me invite him, Murhaf Jouejati. Dear Murhaf, welcome.
Thank you very much, Tülin. Thank you.
And happy birthday. What a nice birthday gift that,
Thank you.
Assad's toppling or the falling comes on the day of your birthday. How are you? How do you feel about the news?
I am ecstatic. I am absolutely ecstatic. I am in some shock and have not been able to absorb all this completely yet. The shock is not only about the short time that it took to force the collapse of the Assad regime, but the mere fact of it. It has been over 60 years that Syria has been under a dictatorship. And so for 11 days to collapse this dictatorship is absolutely stunning.
It's absolutely stunning. Everyone is trying to digest the news and what to think about, the next day after Assad's, falling, because I mean, this is a regime we shouldn't, I guess, count it from 2000 onwards, but 1971 onwards, right, Murhaf? And so for many of us trying to understand a regime like this, that it ends, so what comes next? Because its human rights record has never been a good one. The taste that it left behind, it's awful. It has so many sins. So how do you take everything to a clean page? What is the next day? How do you build a clean page for Syria now?
One small caveat before I answer your question: it hasn't been only since 1970 when Hafez Assad took power in Syria. It goes back to 1963 with the emergence of the Ba'ath Party. That is when dictatorship started. Hafez Assad hijacked the Ba'ath Party to have his own Syria. He died in the year 2000 and was succeeded, although a republic, was succeeded by his son. The day after, hopefully, is going to look very much different than the past 60 years. In the past 60 years, and especially under the rule of the Assad family, there were thousands of political prisoners. There was widespread torture. There was widespread corruption, the milking of the Syrian economy, the impoverishment of the Syrian people, and the fear with which the Syrian citizens lived. Now we see the outpouring of happiness of the Syrians. And what is fantastic is a public commitment by the rebels, by the Syrian opposition, a public opinion to rule by law, that all citizens are equal before the law, and that minorities should not live in fear, as has been widely projected. And so, I look at footage here from Washington of what is going on in Syria, not only the festivities in Damascus and Homs and Hama and Aleppo, but also in the heartland of the Alawi minority sect in Latakia and Tartus, their capital, the festivities and the tearing down of Assad statues. So, words may not mean much. We have to judge by actions. and certainly by the actions of the past 11 days of the opposition, have been really good news.
Yes, this is long overdue. I guess many Syrians were really waiting for this day and to see the day that the Assad regime comes to an end. But before we start talking about how to rebuild the new Syria, can you just help us understand from where you are? How do you see that this came to being? Many news reports suggest that Turkey had the backing of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Some do argue that it wasn't Turkey, but Turkey collaborated with the US and maybe to a certain extent with the United Kingdom. And so how do you perceive this? Who had the backing of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or was it only, or they did a solo action?
Turkey has a very, very special place in the crisis of the past 14 years. Turkey has its national interests, and it wants to protect its borders with Syria. As a result, Turkey has been of great help to what is called the Free Syrian Army, that later turned into the Syrian National Army, that occupies the northern part of Syria that borders Turkey. Turkey is also part of the Astana process, which includes Russia and Iran, in order to guarantee a ceasefire, and they have had an influence over the province of Idlib, where Hayat Tahrir al-Sham happens to be located. So again, Turkey has a special participation. What is very noteworthy recently is the weakening of Iran and Iran's proxies, especially Hezbollah, which, along with Iran, had propped up the Assad regime. But in the war between Hezbollah and Israel, Hezbollah has been weakened very much. In the tit for tat between Iran and Israel, Iran has been weakened very much. Russia, which also propped up the Assad regime in the year 2015 by military force, by bombing hospitals and schools and pharmacies and bakeries, was able to prop up the Assad regime. Russia is also engaged in its war in the Ukraine. So as a result of the allies of the Assad regime, Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah, as a result of their weakening, this was the right time for Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, in coordination with other militias that are anti-Assad, was able to make the move that it did.
Do you think Russia is going to be able to hold on to its military bases in Syria, in Latakia?
This remains to be seen. Russia has a special interest, of course, in having a presence in the warm waters of the Mediterranean. Tartus is the port that provides this. Russia also has a major airbase in Hmeimim in Syria. Surely they would like to maintain these bases. It remains to be seen how a relationship evolves between the new Syria and Russia. But certainly Russia, I think, has in the past weeks or more given up on the Assad regime. And that's why, although it interfered in the initial days of this current event, has stopped assisting Bashar al-Assad.
Is it also the same for Iran, that Iranian forces will be withdrawn to back to their country?
Iran also has made a lot of rhetorical statements about running to the aid of the Assad regime, its ally, but it has been severely weakened. Its proxies have been severely weakened. And of late, what I hear are that pro-Iranian militias, in addition to regime components with their arms, have fled to Iraq. Although pro-Iran Iraqi militias have tried to enter Syria, there was the remarkable announcement by the cleric Muqtada Sadr in Iraq for the Iraqis not to intervene themselves, not to interfere in any outside crisis. They have their own, thank you very much. So as of now, the pro-Iranian militias are leaving Syria. Hezbollah, yesterday and before yesterday, have been leaving their base in Qusayr along the Lebanese border. And so that really left the rebels to be able to march to Damascus without any major military hindrance.
Yeah, and there are also some rumors or speculations that the Russians, but mostly the Iranians, didn't come to the rescue of Assad and just, really didn't want to continue backing him because of the fact that since Hamas attack to Israel on October 7, Assad stayed indifferent. It took a position that my hands are full. I like to, stay focused on my troubles and you do yours. And that, the speculations are such that this also ended both Iran and Russian support to Assad. How do you approach to such kind of interpretation of the recent developments?
Well, Tülin, what you are saying is an assumption that Assad is a free agent and he takes his decisions independently. I don't think that is the case, that Assad did not intervene in the war between Israel and Hamas, nor between Israel and Hezbollah. According to my sources and my information, that he has been told not to intervene. He has been advised mostly by the United Arab Emirates and its allies, perhaps in the US, not to intervene in these things lest Israel go after him. And since his first and foremost focus on maintaining his power, maintaining his control, he has not even made a speech when he was invited to the Arab League summit in order to keep out of this, in order not to get in trouble. Were the Iranians angry at him for that? Surely. Was Hezbollah extremely angry at him for that? Absolutely. But still, the Assad regime is the ally of Iran, and despite their anger, I think they would have intervened had they not been so weakened in recent months, them and their proxies. And it is as a result of this weakening of Iran and its proxies that they were not able or capable to come to his aid.
Right. So this was sort of inevitable.
Yes.
Right. So have to rebuild a new Syria. Now, there are so many opportunities, but also complications about the new page, Murhaf. So help us understand how this is going to happen. But because when we are looking at it, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is a terrorist organization accepted by the United Nations, by United States, by the European Union, including Turkey. So I don't think that this organization is going to solely own the project of rebuilding Syria on its own. But how are they going to approach to it? Because to a certain extent, I guess many wonder the role of these terrorist organizations in the new Syria and what it would mean. Can you help us understand these dilemmas, please?
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is a movement that seceded from Al-Qaeda. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham was the Syrian branch of Al-Qaeda. And as a result, it was labeled, categorized as a terrorist organization, you're right, by the United Nations, by the US, and many other countries. We do have to remember that this is history, that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham has fought Al-Qaeda, other than seceding from it. We have to remember that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham fought ISIS. And we have to remember that the big ideological difference between Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and Al-Qaeda is that Al-Qaeda has a global approach to its strategy, whereas Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is solely focused on the collapse of the Assad regime. We have seen Hayat Tahrir al-Sham now having experience in governance in the province of Idlib for the past 4 or 5 years, and they have increasingly become less conservative, less ideologues.
What does it mean, Murhaf?
What this means is that they have not threatened minorities. They have not imposed their Islamic ideology on non-Muslims. They have not acted like the organizations we fear, like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda, like the Taliban. Recently, when they liberated Aleppo, they invited the cardinal of Aleppo to become the mayor of Aleppo. That tells us something. When they assaulted Homs and took it over, and there's a large Alawi minority in Homs, they went house to house to make sure that the Alawis there felt safe. That tells us something. In terms of the day after and in terms of governance, what is equally stunning to me is that yesterday they invited the Assad regime prime minister to continue as a caretaker government in order to share the administrative files with the rebels in view of future governance. So that ensures a certain bureaucratic continuity, which will ensure a certain kind of stability. Again, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is not the only player, though the major one, but is not the only actor in this collapse of the Assad regime, but it is in coordination with others, some of which are secular groups. So we should not jump to conclusion and saying that a terrorist regime of Assad has been replaced by a terrorist regime of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Let's give them time. Let's see if they can match their deeds with their words.
Okay, my dear friend, I know that you are a very secular and an open-minded person. So if you're saying so, okay, let's give them, time. But sometimes, I mean, what it is when you look at it from the outskirts, in order to turn the page, sometimes, people do say things just to cross the bridge. But then once they're done, things move backwards into, and these things, when you're talking about the Al-Qaeda mentality and how they shifted from Al-Qaeda to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, especially for the leader Jolani. He has been the right hand of Zawahiri, Al-Qaeda Iraq's leader. The mentality, seems quite hardlined. And I will move to the other, organizations or the groups in Syria. But in terms of approaching to it, I just, want to hear more from you in terms of, was it a given or that he had to, go this path of violence so that he has come back to his senses, that he made the mental leap of change, and or that once you crossed that line and moved into violence and, have taken lives and, done so many, numerous things. Because even though we are going to talk about the, people freed from the Assad prisons, but he has also, prisoned many innocents as well, and done so many other awful things. and I just, look at it and I don't know what to say. Then that Syria really worries me. Take it from there, Murhaf. I guess you understood the point.
I understand the point, Tülin, and I agree with you, and I sympathize with your potential skepticism. Movements like this have a tendency to say the right things, but then to act in different ways as they consolidate their power. I totally understand that. But do understand also the nature of the Syrian people. The Syrian people, again, have been under a dictatorship for over 60 years. They know the game. They will not go back to a dictatorial regime. On the religious front, Syrians, though conservative, are not crazy. They do not exaggerate in their fundamentalism. They are a people of merchants. They are a people of the Mediterranean. They are at the borders of Europe, and they have traveled, and they have been educated inside and outside. So I don't think that the character of the Syrian citizen is going to allow Syria to move from one murderous dictatorship to another. Again, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is not alone. It's going to be in its governance. And so if they are to survive, they are going to have to govern with others who will put a constraint on their ideological zeal. So again, I totally understand what you are saying. I have the same fear of words not being translated into actual action. But I am seeing and sensing the mood of the Syrian body politic, and to me it looks like they will not allow another strongman type authoritarian dictatorship to take place.
Okay, let's hope for the better to come. In terms of, again, rebuilding the new Syria, who has a say, both internally and internationally? Can you paint us a picture of the groups, of the actors, political actors, and what else?
What I understand from from people I talk to is that the tentative plan is for Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and its local militant allies to consolidate and stabilize now. But Mr. Jouejati and his group have tried to emphasize that he is and they are military leaders that now want to consolidate and stabilize the country and invite a civilian network to do the governance for the next short period of time, 6 to 9 months, before holding national elections. And so in the mindset of Jouejati and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the military, which are now in power, would turn over governance to a civilian government. I hope this holds true. And again, I doubt that the Syrian body politic would allow another military dictatorship. But the plan, actually, one indication of the veracity of this plan is the mere fact that they have taken the prime minister of the Assad regime and not hanged him and want to cooperate with him. And he has accepted cooperation. And as we speak, there is a turnover. He is turning over the bureaucratic and administrative files, the electricity sector, the oil sector, the health sector, so on, to the future folks that are going to be in governance. This is a very indication of things to come. I hope I'm right. I hope they hold to their words.
Well, In terms of the country's territorial integrity, there are so many scenarios that it will be divided to sections. It will turn into being a federal government, that it's not going to hold together, that its unity will be questioned. There are so many different layers of worries and questions for the future. Where do you stay on these?
For now, we have seen unity. But you're right. There are many problems. There are many challenges to tackle. Will the coastline and it's the Alawi heartland, will it secede? I don't think so, because they do not have the power. The army has collapsed.
Mhm.
There is the Kurdish question. Will they secede? What we are seeing now is some sort of communication between the rebels now who have taken over power in Damascus and the Kurdish element. I need to remind you that the Kurdish National Council is a member of the Ittilaf, which is a coalition of forces of civilians that are in opposition to the Assad regime. So we can't look at our crystal ball now and speculate accurately. We have to let time pass by to see what happens more clearly. There are many challenges ahead, but as of now, what we see is a unity of the Syrian body politic.
Right. Murhaf, the Americans are supporting different forces on the Syrian theater. They're not only cooperating with the PYD or the Syrian Democratic Forces, but also with the Free Syrian Army. How do you see that Americans are now going to play this book in the new Syria? How will they move forward?
The United States, in its official statements, says that it is assisting the Kurdish element in the northeast of Syria in order to fight ISIS. But now, if you look at the map, ISIS is extremely weak and only in some pockets. So I don't think this is the only reason why the US is there. Could it be to check Russian influence? Could it be to check Turkish influence? What could it be? At any rate, President-elect Trump has made a statement yesterday or before yesterday to saying that this is not the America's fight. Let them go at it by themselves. He has, when he was president, wanted and sought to withdraw the 900 American troops from Syria. And so, again, we have to watch what happens when President Trump comes to power. I suspect that the US will remove its troops when he is in power.
So they're going to hold on to their presence in Syria. I just didn't follow how this translates to the, to the theater, to the Syrian theater. It could be for Russians, it could be for Turkey, but also the area, the territory that the Kurds are holding on to has it's very rich with the oil resources. It's where the Syrian wealth is anchored, and so I guess this is not only to have a stick to Turkey or to Russia, but that's also going to. I mean, if it's going to remain in the hands of the Kurdish groups, that's also going to say something to the rest of the Syrian population. So there are so many other dynamics. Can you just expand it a little bit more? As I'm speaking from Ankara, this is just, something we're really very curious about how this is going to move forward.
You're absolutely right. In that Kurdish northeastern part of Syria, there is the Syrian oil wealth. They grow wheat there. There is gas. It's a very rich area. And with the years of American support for the YPG, or as they call themselves, the Syrian Democratic Forces, they have been able to mount something like a government with institutions that would lead many to think, that they are on their way to an autonomous status like in the north of Iraq. But with a potential American withdrawal in the near future, they really cannot go anywhere. They are challenged by Turkish power. They will be challenged by Syrian power, who doesn't want that rich area to secede. And now there are communications between them and the power holders now in Damascus, who have committed also to an equality before the rule of law with the Syrian Kurdish citizens. So I do not anticipate that there will be an independent Kurdish secessionist state in the northeast of Syria that threatens both Syria and Turkey. I don't think that is what is in the future, but I see it more as perhaps some degree of local cultural autonomy within Syrian boundaries that does not threaten the interests of Turkey, because the future Syria has absolutely no interest in threatening the Turkish national interest and national security.
Okay, so for that, I mean, the path is easy, that you free yourself from the PKK terrorists and that they do not target Turkey's, national security, and they do not carry out attacks from the Syrian territory into Turkey. So you say that there is a hope that they will also move into that direction in terms of their mentality.
The PKK has been, even by the Syrian body politic, categorized as a terrorist organization. And a major section of the Kurdish population of Syria belongs to the Kurdish National Council, which is part of the coalition of revolutionary groups that have thus far been opposing the Assad regime. So I do not foresee any movement in that Kurdish area that would be sympathetic or helpful to the PKK.
Amen for the day, Murhaf. I mean, what a, change this 10, 12 days has, made for the region. We were thinking that we haven't seen the worst yet, but you're saying that, okay, we have seen, really awful days, but now there is a hope. That's the picture you're painting for Syria, right? It only gives me, really happiness and hope, but I will move the direction to the next question. But isn't that so? I mean, the whole emotions has changed.
Tülin, it used to be said that Assad needs to maintain power in Syria in order to maintain stability in Syria and in the region. I am of the view that the Assad regime was a major source of instability in Syria and in the region.
Well, that's a dictator. That's what they do.
Yes. Now there is a new mood in Syria. And with, again, in the past 11 days, where I have seen this sense of purpose, this sense of unity in the Syrian people, I think that is far more stabilizing for Syria. And a stable Syria can spill over into stability in the rest of the Middle East. I don't want to just paint a rosy picture. There are many problems. There are many challenges ahead. There are many people who promise many things. I am aware of that. But today, my dear Tülin, Syria, and I think potentially the region is in a better place without the Assad regime.
Yeah, and you can paint a rosy picture because Assad has fallen on your birthday. What else, do you really, pray God for? So this is really huge. So I can totally understand it. But I'm on the worrying side with, my sincere apologies to Murhaf, because we really have seen many tragedies in this region. It's as if it's never coming to an end, that we never learn how we harm each other, and all the opportunities and hopes and all the good things that could be out in the sky for us. And we're really the masters of killing all of these good things. And now, with that, I'll move on to the refugees, because they've gone through a lot. Some have been displaced within and inside Syria. Some had to leave their countries and seek refuge in Turkey, in Lebanon, in Jordan, and also in some European and maybe in the US as well countries. And so for those who are really far away, that's a different, story. But for the, bordering countries, including ours, the Turkish Republic, there are more than 3 million Syrian refugees here. Some from Lebanon has already started crossing border into Syria, and people were really very happy. And some here speculated that, this is going to repeat the same for the Syrians in Turkey. And because there are some dilemmas that the Turks and the Syrians are getting along, but there are so many other very worrisome developments as well. There are some cultural clashes. There are some, even, for the conservative mentality, these are not exactly the same. So, being together, living together under the same roof, it's not an easy thing. So how do you expect that this is going to move forward? Even though I do not want to move you away from that rosy picture, once you come back to your analysis, how do you see these refugees taking decisions, going back to their country?
On this note, Tülin, I really would like to thank Turkey, its government and its people, for having embraced and taken in over 3 million refugees for such a long time. So Turkey, thank you. Having said that, I saw yesterday again footage of a large column of cars coming from Turkey to Syria, of refugees returning to Syria in order to claim their homes and to see what happened to their neighborhoods and so on. As there is confidence that builds in Syria, because now there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear of the unknown. But as confidence comes back, I think that there is going to be a large movement of Syrian refugees back to Syria, whether it's from Turkey or Lebanon or Jordan, and even from Europe. Now, the Syrian refugee population, which incidentally you said some Syrians are refugees, we're talking about half the population of Syria. Half the population of Syria is either displaced or outside the country. The body of Syrian refugees is not a monolith. You are going to have many that go back home. You are going to have many that would want to stay there because they have been living there and they have opened businesses and have relationships and so on, and where life has been better. So we cannot expect all Syrian refugees to return, and we should expect that in the hundreds of thousands of Syrians will return to Syria in order to reclaim their lives and their homes.
And their properties, right?
And their properties, of course.
That's an important thing. So if everything goes
and to be back
well,
with their families and their loved ones and their properties. No refugee likes to be a refugee, no matter how comfortable things become. But again, there are going to be some that have made new lives abroad that would want to stay there. But I suspect from what I saw yesterday that many, many more are going to return to Syria. With time, the factor of confidence is critical here.
Right. So everything is conditional for the day, because if everything goes well, if the transition happens in the direction as you paint, and if the opposite happens, then there's always the risk of having even more refugees and Syria creating even more troubles for itself and also for its crossing or its bordering neighbors. But
if things go differently, it will be more than half of Syria that are refugees. Europe and Turkey will have many more refugees. And so it is important to keep a check on these future power holders in Syria and to make sure, again, that their deeds match their words. But you're right, it could go either way. And again, I don't want to paint too rosy a picture, but I believe that things are heading in the right direction.
In terms of, speaking about the geostrategic challenges and the way how these things are being, or the, policies have been implemented. This also, comes on a day when the Notre Dame Cathedral was opened yesterday. And that the French President Emmanuel Macron has managed to bring together the President-elect Donald Trump and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And to my surprise, by the way, Trump had worn the Ukrainian flag's colors. That was really very, lofty, because he was painted by the many in the US media as someone who's in the pocket of Putin. But as things develop, I see a picture that Americans are closing the game in a way that once the Russian influence is just crippled or minimized in Syria, as well as Iran's, but for now, Russia, now they have a stronger hand bringing the Ukrainian theater to Kiev's adventure to an end, keeping an eye on Kiev's advantage. I hope I said it right. Do you see that this was targeted, or this just, happened in the flow? Was it coincidental?
Tülin, I'm going to surprise you. I
Okay.
have been focused totally on Syria. God bless the
Have
Ukrainians.
you not slept last night, Murhaf?
I'm sorry?
Have you not slept last night?
I have not.
Because you were so emotional, right?
I have followed the Russian-Ukrainian issue very, very closely. I have watched and read the statements of President-elect Trump and how he might go about things. But I have to tell you, in all honesty, my dear Tülin, you and your audience, my mind is totally focused on Syria.
I can understand. Okay, let's just, closing up our conversation, let's just a little bit talk about these prisons, because I've been also reading so many reports on the people who have been imprisoned by the Assad regime. Some haven't seen the daylight for 3-4 decades, that they have no idea about what a smartphone is, that Saddam Hussein is toppled, that there has been an Arab Spring, that they have no knowledge of so many things that had happened during that time. And maybe some, more other things. What's your feeling about those, that now they are freed?
One of the political prisoners I met who was released was absolutely flabbergasted at the remote control. That you can change channels with a remote control device. The prisoner that has been imprisoned the longest in Syria has been imprisoned for 43 years.
43 years, it's a lifetime, Murhaf. Who's that?
43 years. And he was an Air Force pilot who in 1982 refused to bomb the city of Hama. And for that, he was imprisoned.
Blessings to him.
There
What a
are
terrible person. And he's still alive and good,
He's
is he?
still alive. There are pictures of him. He's out of jail. He knows nothing about the world. 43 years in jail, and it's not any jail. They are really, they are human garbage places. People imprisoned, yeah, mostly I hear of 12 years, 14 years, 20 years. And there are hundreds of thousands of them. And most have not been charged. Many do not know why they're in prison. And in the riots that began in 2011, the peace movement that began against the Assad regime, their court usually would take not more than a minute, with the military judge asking, did you kill anybody? Did you participate in any administrations? And what is your name? And they would be, of course, they have absolutely no counsel. They cannot call their families, and they're thrown in the dungeon in order to be tortured. Now, when you factor in all these things, then a revolution against the Assad regime becomes understandable. And so my heart goes out to all those prisoners that have spent such a long time in jail for really no major reason. And my heart goes out to their families that have endured for so long, not knowing if their loved ones are dead or alive.
Wow. I mean, this is just, really, there are so many stories to be told, and Syrians have a lot catching up to do. And this is really crazy times. It's really very difficult to comprehend all the complexities and the complications of this fall of the Assad regime. But, big congrats to you. As closing up, do you have anything that you like to add for us to understand the next stages of rebuilding Syria?
Well, before the next stages, what the world needs to know is how much they underestimated the resilience of the Syrian people. And it's the Syrian people that have liberated themselves from the Assad regime without outside interference, without outside military interference. They did it on their own. And that goes to show the resilience. And also, it goes to show dictators and future dictators that when they oppress their people, this is their fate. The fate of Gaddafi, the fate of Saddam Hussein, the fate of Bashar al-Assad. So to all those dictators, I hope that they learn the lesson. With the future, I am hoping for the best for Syria, and Syrians really deserve this after more than 60 years of dictatorship. The Syrians have, throughout their long and rich history, have been a very creative people. And I trust them to be very creative in the future. And I am hoping for a future Syria that shows the true grit of the Syrian people.
Yeah, Syrian American expert Murhaf Jouejati, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Big congratulations and happy birthday again, Murhaf.
Thank you very much, Tülin, and thank you. And I want again to thank Turkey, government and people for having embraced the Syrian refugees for so long. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me just, remove you from the screen once again. And to everyone who are watching us, thank you so much for watching. And we will be on air next week. Be well, be happy.